Clic, mao, ça tue, ça blesse, ça flingue. Aïe, 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 mao, gazo, clic, mao.
You know, we talked about the MD helicopter, the 500 in particular, is just a staple in law enforcement, aviation community, and public safety for that matter. And Jack, I'm going to go back to you and in your career. You know, you achieved the dream. You made it to aviation. Can you talk about your career a little bit, flying the 500, what your experience was with that, and then maybe just a little bit about the unit you were in charge of?
Sure. We'll talk about the products first. Most of my time is in the 500E, and then we converted all of our E models to Fs. That helicopter. So backing up, I told you I did my very first flight as a rider in a 300C. Actually trained in a 300C, but by the time I got to the unit, those were gone and they had transitioned to a turbine fleet. So the whole idea was to get those trained law enforcement eyes over a target in the shortest possible amount of time, right? So that decision, that wise decision, was made by the city to do just that, and we had great success in doing so. And of course, you guys have probably walked through the evolution of tactical moving maps and advanced camera systems and downlink systems and all those things that really weren't in existence, in the late 90s, but not until you got into the early 2000s. So we had a very basic tactical moving map. So we still had to kind of know the streets and things because there was like a 30-second lag, so you'd be over a target, and then
so you had meta maps. Is that what you had?
I didn't want to call Don out, but yeah.
I love
exactly
Don, but
right.
let's just call meta maps what it was.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? To his credit, he really tried hard to develop a great product. And
at the time, it was. I mean, it was a great
yeah,
product.
yeah, it was kind of revolutionary, and I got to give credit to Mark Gassaway from Aero Computers, who took it to the next level. But anyway, and you'll remember this. You're like, okay, there's my target right there, and then you see your helicopter kind of catching up, and you've already done like an orbit, and then it now you're over target with that helicopter.
Right. Yeah.
But it was the 500E was a fantastic, and is a fantastic, and I'm a little biased. I'm an MD guy, but the best patrol helicopter out there, hands down. Speed, agility, and just the maneuverability and characteristics of that aircraft to do what you needed it to do. A lot of people think of just orbiting a target, or they think of a car chase, but not very many people that are outside of what we do think about the little things like when you have somebody get out of a car and you need to chase them. Now, what happens to the aircraft? Your orbits are what they are, but if I don't have an aircraft that I can keep my TFO over target, then I'm useless. So the 500E very much did that, and it's such a forgiving helicopter. I mean, that if you trained in a 300C, which is the 269, it's a Hughes 269, into that 369, which is the 500E or F. If you trained, that training translated into that helicopter, and it made you a very, very good pilot, and you were able to keep your TFO over target because the ease of training in that helicopter and the capabilities of the airframe itself. So we found that in the summertime we were losing a little bit of our response time, and that's why we decided, hey, we need to kind of upgrade these things to an engine that's going to work. In other words, we were temping out in the summertime before we were torquing out, but with the F now, I'm gonna torque out before I temp out. That TOT just doesn't move on that F if you've ever flown one. So now what we did with that high hot helicopter is we bumped our response time up even further. And then with the longer main rotor blades and tail rotor blades, just that much more maneuverability and capability. So again, just a premier patrol helicopter, did exactly what we needed it to do. And as far as maintenance and things like that go, very low DOCs on that thing, and it just was magnet perfect for Columbis and other agencies. So
it's funny if I interrupt. Jack and
yeah.
I were trading running takeoff stories yesterday with skid gear, and you do it once, it's kind of like, well, okay, and then then it becomes normal.
Yeah.
Yep.
You guys have experienced those hot days, and
Yeah.
you're like, you go to an airport and you're like, hey, can I ride? And you're like, how much do you weigh? And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, you're too fat, but we're going to go ahead and make this work. And then you just slide her down the runway.
It was
Yeah.
interesting when I started with Hughes, the F model had just been certified. We're just finishing up the F model certification, and the thought there was, it was going to be probably, I don't know what it was, 10-1 E models to F models sold, and now it's just the opposite. There's really not much, everybody wants an F model.
Yeah.
Yep. And when you think about it, if you look at like the engine, C20B or R that guys are running in the E's, and then you got the C30, and you say, well, wait a minute, well, that's a bigger engine. It's gonna cost me more in fuel. Well, 5 gallons more, but think about the horsepower you're getting, and you're going to maintain that airspeed that you need. That's what it's all about.
The longer blades too. I remember having the conversation when I did the Kilo Lima testing, which were they were 6 inches longer than the F blades, and it just didn't work out. And I had I was sitting down with the blade designer, and I said, hey, how come this didn't work? He goes, Brad, the KL model blades were 6 inches too long. The D model blades were 6 inches. E model blades were 6 inches too short. The F model blades were just right. So that was the engineering explanation I got. I got it.
Yeah, it works.
It works.
It's the Goldilocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
But so my experience in that ship was good. And then looking at it from, I had the privilege of looking at it from a business standpoint in maintaining the fleet as the unit commander. And what a simple, well, I say it now, but I felt like a firefighter every day, either trying to get money or trying to get parts or whatever, keep everything going. But it made life easy with that aircraft because, like Brad said earlier, it's a very simplistic design, and as long as you have the right parts, you're going to keep going, and the reliability is unmatched.
Yeah. Going back to your department, can you talk about you talked about your personnel, but your mission profile was patrol. Were you guys doing any rescue work or anything on top of that?
So strictly patrol. There were times where we had some impromptu light SAR work that we weren't really trained to do, but we did. I had one of my guys, probably a year or so before I left. He saved a man's life, and it was wintertime. A man had walked out onto one of our local creeks, and he was going to try to do some fishing. And he fell in, and the ice it wasn't thick enough, and he fell in, and the fire department is who normally would get their boats and they would go out, but for some reason they were delayed in their response. And my crew, of course, was overhead first. They saw that he was struggling to keep his head above the water, and senior pilot made a decision. He says, I can't let this guy die. I know that I can go down and at least get a skid to him and pull him up and pull him over to shore. And that's exactly what he did.
That's cool.
And, as a unit commander, you're thinking, okay, we did not train for that. You didn't have the authority to do it, but you did a great thing and you saved somebody's life. And the proper response is what we did. We commended him for it because I knew his ability and I knew the capabilities of the aircraft, and I knew that he did not put the TFO in danger or anyone else and save someone's life. So it was amazing what he did. But our mission, or their mission, I keep saying our, like I'm still there, but Columbus fantastic. I don't know if have you been there, John or
No,
Jeff?
I've never.
And
I've been to Columbis. Yeah.
yeah, if you're ever in the area, make sure you stop by the facility. It's a beautiful facility. The city was gracious enough to build a standalone heliport for the unit, and it's state of the art. Just really, really awesome. But strictly a patrol mission. The structure, the personnel structure: 1 lieutenant, 3 sergeants, 17 officers. So everyone who walked in the door was seniority based. Excuse me. And I've talked to a lot of people, then and then after, and there's pros and cons to having just strictly seniority based, because whoever has the time or the exceptional qualification is who you get.
Yeah.
Whereas like some agencies like LA, I know they're really good about interviewing people and trying to select and put people through testing to get the right person for their job. Respect that. I think it's awesome that you have the ability to do that. But if you don't have that ability and all you have is seniority, then you really have to up your training game and really kind of focus on those new people. So with that big of a unit, it was challenging at times, and we did everything we could do to maintain the staff. But like I had mentioned earlier, there's opportunities that come along, and people need to think about their families and their income and
Oh, there you are. We lost you for a minute.
Oh, where'd you lose me at?
Not at the beginning, but no.
Did you just say I'm long-winded?
No, I'm just kidding.
You're talking about the training and then the TFO.
Yeah.
Focusing on the pipeline of training, because you've got such people.
So
with experience.
and I'll share this with you. From my perspective, to get that pilot and TFO to a point to where they are self-sufficient and build their time, because we want them to have 500 hours minimum, and then we get their commercial rating. To get them to that point, it's 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
Just to get one person to that point. And then what if you have someone who, is struggling in their flight training? Then what do you do? And we had mechanisms. We didn't want to like run people out, but we had mechanisms to engage if we needed. So it's very, very challenging to kind of maintain that staff, but we made it work.
Yeah, the recruitment and retainment and the selection process, all those things we talk about quite a bit. And what works for one city doesn't work for another.
Right.
I do like the idea of seniority just for the reason of having experience. Being that TFO is a difficult job, and so is pilot. And I feel like if you come in as a young TFO, it's not always this way, but your job's a little more difficult because you have a lot of responsibilities on your shoulders that typically don't come until you have got a little more time on in your career. So I do like that part of it. That's interesting.